Oh, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Discovery Live Ask an Expert. My name is Leslie Struck. I'm the curator of the Local History Archive at Fort Collins Museum of Discovery. I am so excited to be your moderator this evening. This is the second time I've done it, so I think that means that the first time I must have done a really good job, and they asked me to come back and do it again. So here I am, and we have some really great speakers lined up for you this evening. And I'll bring them on in just a minute. But first, I wanted to let you know that tonight's program is part of an ongoing series called Discovery Live. And it is a monthly program where we bring experts to you. And you can join us each month for the opportunity to hear from biologists, like today, chemists, archaeologists, historians, engineers, musicians, and much more. And to learn more and to look at the schedule, you can visit our website at fcmod.org/events. And so we're going to get started. Tonight we're chatting with Melanie Peffer and Anita Schuch. I'm going to have to ask her how to pronounce her name, but Schuchart. Melanie is a research associate at the Institute of Cognitive Science at CU Boulder. Hi, Melanie.
Hello, Leslie. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing so well, thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Leslie, you're muted.
I'm going to have to get used to this. So, thank you. Well, we can watch out for each other because I'm going to have to get used to the clicking. You'd think after a year of this, I would be good at it, but you would be wrong. So we're going to keep going.
You know, I did a science communication workshop earlier today, and we had to do the, oh, you're muted. You're muted thing. It just doesn't ever end.
No, it doesn't. This is our lives now. So Melanie, you have written a book called Biology Everywhere: How the Science of Life Matters is it in everyday life? I think maybe I wrote that wrong.
To everyday life.
To everyday life. And yeah, we're just so happy to have you here. And I was also want to introduce our other panelist this evening. And it's Anita, who is a professor of biology teaching and learning at the University of Minnesota. So, hi. Hello, Anita.
Hi, Leslie. I'm still working on the mute button as well. It's really nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to hear the discussion and to talk to people today.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. And yeah, could you tell me how to pronounce your last name? Because I don't think I got it.
Schuchart, you got it exactly right. Well done.
Yay, thank you. Yeah, people ask me about my last name too, and it's Struck, like lightning struck or disaster struck. So that's what we're going to go with. So yeah, I'm going to try to stop talking so much because, yeah, we do have to play with our mute buttons tonight. But I did want to kind of jump in. I thought maybe I could let you both do an introduction for yourselves. That was better than mine, maybe more complete and thorough. So why don't you get started? Melanie, why don't we start with you?
Okay, so I'm Melanie Peffer. So like Leslie mentioned, I'm an author. So I wrote a book called Biology Everywhere: How the Science of Life Matters to Everyday Life. It is available for purchase at the museum gift store. So next time you stop by FCMOD, swing by the gift store, pick up a copy for you or a friend. I also have a children's spinoff coming at the end of this year. I am on faculty at University of Colorado Boulder. I wear two hats. So I'm a research scientist in the Institute of Cognitive Science, where I study how people learn and understand biology. And I'm also an instructor with the residential academic program. And so I teach a small cohort of students every year that has aspirations in the medical field, all about molecular biology. So I do intro to cell and molecular biology in the fall and genetics in the spring. And I also do science communication workshops. I do a lot of writing for the general public, a lot of blogging, podcasting, all sorts of fun stuff.
That's great. I'm kind of worn out from just hearing about all the stuff that you're doing. That's great. Well, fantastic. And then Anita, can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, hi. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Minnesota, as Leslie mentioned, and I'm in the Department of Biology Teaching and Learning, and I do research on how students learn and how we can help students learn better. What does it take to teach, and what do students think about various topics? And I'm particularly interested in different ways that students can grapple with biology. whether it's through mathematics or through pictures, as well as through words, which is our primary means. And this is, I started out as a biology researcher. So I started out as a biology researcher and got a doctorate in biology research. And then I taught high school for a number of years. And then I went back to school because I was so interested in how students learn, to get a degree in the learning sciences. And then that's how I eventually ended up at the University of Minnesota in the position that I have now. And I love it because I also teach a class. And so I get to combine my love of biology and my love of research and learning. So it's really nice.
Wow, very cool. Well, you both have really awesome jobs, and you mentioned your background a little bit, Anita. But I was wondering how both of you just kind of chose biology as your career path. So that's our first question. Oh, and I should also mention that we do take comments and questions. So you can, viewers at home, you can type in a question on whatever platform you're using to watch us, and I will try to get to those and moderate those and ask them. So just keep that in mind too. So yes, so back to the question, how did you end up with biology as your career path in life?
So I was always really, my parents used to joke that I was far more interested in watching the Learning Channel when the Learning Channel still had a lot of science content than cartoons when I was little. So I've always gravitated towards the sciences. My dad used to take me into his research lab when I was a kid. But I just always had a thing for biology. I had some wonderful biology teachers when I was in school. I always think of my 6th grade biology teacher and then my AP biology teacher as having a huge influence on why I gravitated towards biology finally. Like Anita, I started in biology. My doctorate is in biology, but have since moved over into learning sciences and understanding how people learn and understand science, and specifically in biology. And so, Leslie, this gets to your other question, how do Anita and I know each other? We know each other through a mutual connection at the University of Pittsburgh, where we both have our doctorate degrees. And it was just a random email that I got one day that said, you know, you have really similar interests as Anita. You guys should chat. And then that kind of kicked off. And that was several years ago, and it's kicked off collaborations and projects. We've been working on an NSF funded project together for the last year and change now, I think. We've had papers come out together. We've got another paper coming out. And so it's been an interesting journey in boundary crossing, which I think we'll both end up talking about today, going from biology to learning and how different it is to be in the psychology field compared to being in a biology field.
Yeah, thanks for, I was going to ask that question about how you know each other. And so I'm glad you answered it because I didn't know. I don't know either of you. This is the first time we've met and it's really exciting for me. But I did use Dr. Google on both of you to just kind of get a little background. So, and I did want to go back to you, Anita, about like just, you know, do you have a similar story like Melanie about being a kid who loved biology, or what got you to where you are today?
So it's interesting because what led me down to doing biology research was actually reading something in my biology class in 9th grade. And I was reading one of those excerpts in the textbooks, you know, where they say, oh, what do people do as careers? And it was all about genetics. And I was super fascinated. And I thought, that's the career for me. That's what I want to do. And I was stuck on that from that time forward. And I picked my undergrad because it allowed me to study institution because it allowed me to study genetics. And then that's what I did. And I just never really looked back after that. And then, but my parents mentioned a little while ago that I had asked for a microscope when I was 7 years old. So it made me think that, oh, I must have been interested in science from a really young age as well. And I was very fortunate because my mom, she loved nature and she would always be able to identify all the plants and all the birds when we would go out for walks. And I think that contributed to it as well. And that idea that science is interesting, nature is interesting, there's more to discover about the world if we just look. And so I think that's what led me down that path. And
Oh, that's really great. I like to hear those stories about impactful parents or teachers. You know, I think we all can, I hope we all can relate to that, having somebody who really has an interest and can change the course of your life. Because I remember in ninth grade extracting onion DNA and just having my mind like blown, you know, thinking that that was just, you know, to actually do it and do science and have this thing that we did was just incredible. So as you can tell, I talk a lot about myself because it's so interesting, and I feel like it is kind of this experience that you have these impactful moments in your life that you just never shake, and you never know what's going to happen, which is pretty cool. So awesome. Well, I guess I also wanted to ask. I kind of want to jump into just kind of what you're working on in your careers. I think you've touched on it a little bit, but maybe you can kind of expand on just kind of what you do, maybe what a typical day is like for you, because I think that maybe a lot of people don't, you know, you say you're a scientist or a biologist or a professor, and it's just like, what do you actually do? So maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Anita, do you want to go first this time?
I can do that. So my typical day, I'll just talk about today, is I actually, when I wake up, when I start working, I actually start writing. There's a lot of writing involved in my job, a surprising amount of writing actually, and I find it's easier to tackle first thing in the morning. So I do that first, and I do writing. Usually writing on a paper or a grant proposal. And that's the other thing that surprised me, is how much writing about seeking money and getting grants and money to fund your research there is in this career. I often then will have either a meeting with the collaborators, and one of the nice things about technology is I have collaborators all over. So Melanie and I are not located in the same institution or the same state, and we collaborate. And then I have collaborators in New Hampshire and Texas, and we can talk. And I mentor graduate students and undergraduate students, and sometimes postdocs. And so I'll have a meeting with them, and we'll talk about their research. And as the day starts to come to a close, I do data analysis, because data analysis is my fun space. That's what I love to do. And so sometimes I am doing what we call quantitative data analysis, where I'm looking at numbers and how they relate to each other and different trends. And other times I am looking qualitatively. What are students saying about what they've learned? What are students saying about their experiences? But that I usually do towards the end of the day, because it's my reward. It's what I love to do.
So I'm going to provide a little bit of a counterpoint, because Anita and I have similar roles and do similar work, but we do different things. So much like Anita, I do a lot of writing. I do so much writing every day. And one of the things I love so much about my position is that it's different every day. So it's really hard for me to say what a typical day looks like, especially because I'm only part-time at the university. And so, for example, today I was leading a workshop on science communication with undergraduate interns at one of the national labs. And so that's what I did for most of my day, and then turned around and was working on a grant proposal this afternoon. So in this proposal, we are looking at students' epistemological beliefs about science. And so I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but what it gets down to is it's beliefs we have about knowledge. And beliefs we have about knowledge, so where does knowledge come from, for example, influences how we learn that knowledge. And so it's directly related to science literacy. And so that was today. On a different day, I might get up and go teach and be in the classroom, or I might be focusing on blogging or any of my other science communication projects. I have online courses. You know, it just depends. So I tend to block my days out a little bit. So Mondays, I usually prep for courses, and Tuesdays and Thursdays I teach, and Wednesdays I do research stuff, with a lot of meetings, like Anita mentioned, from all over the world. So I co-edit a blog with somebody from Australia, and the team has somebody from Australia, somebody from Europe, and then me here in Colorado. And trying to get people on 3 continents together for a meeting is a very interesting challenge. it's rather difficult to do, especially when you account for people in Australia being on the other side of the international date lines. We usually do evening Colorado time and morning in Australia the following day. So and again, that's just what I love about it so much, is that it's different every day, and it's a lot of writing too.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear about how much writing there is, and I guess another thing I think is, I don't know if it should be surprising, but just how social it sounds like your jobs are. Like you're just working with people all the time. I think sometimes, okay, maybe I thought that, scientists, you're kind of like in your lab and you're working on a problem or whatever. But I do think that it sounds like you're working with people all the time and writing and using all the skills in that toolbox. So that's pretty cool. Is there anything else that might surprise people about your jobs?
I kind of have to go with what you had said about the stereotypical science view, and I'm guessing Anita probably has something to say about this too, that a lot of people have this image of biologists with the white lab coats working alone or whatever. And that's a very small section of biology. So that's actually something that's in the grant that I'm working on, about how people conceptualize field research in biology differently from laboratory research. Because, ecologists are out in the field. There is molecular ecologists, but somebody who's studying animals, well, they're going to be outside getting dirty. They're not going to be in a pristine environment. And it is very, very collaborative. And that's why going to conferences and networking, anytime people ask me about my career, I can't bang the drum hard enough about how important it is to talk to people. And that so much of it is collaboration and talking and thinking and sharing ideas too.
Working on the unmuting. Yeah, and I agree that surprised me. And I've worked in a molecular biologist research, and that was very collaborative as well. That you work, especially as graduate students and postdocs, you don't have your own separate office most of the time you can retreat to. You're in a lab, your desk is in the lab, and you're working with all these other people in the lab, and you're often working as part of a team on a part of a research project. And so there's a lot of collaboration even in the lab-based work. And that's true with education and research. It's one of the aspects I really like about my job, but it's also because talking to people, you get different ideas, and they spark new ideas in you, but you also can run your ideas by them. And it's something that I find very valuable. But it's also something that I find very challenging. I'm more introverted by nature. And so, I'm saying that because if you are introverted and thinking about a career in the sciences, don't let that put you off. You can manage. I do, and it's something that you learn how to do, and there's a lot of rewards from that collaboration.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, because it does take all types and all kinds of different people and different skills. But I do think that it is really important to. I always say it's what you do and how you do it, because I feel like you can be great at something, but you also need to be able to work with people, and a little bit at least, to try to, I think, be successful in just about any career. So that's my little 2 cents right there. And I did want to jump, because I'm going to change gears for a second, because we did have a question in our chat box, and this is for Emily. Emily, if you're out there, and I think you did have to run, but they're going to try to catch the recording. So Emily, who is age 3, had a question for our biologists tonight. Why do we have to eat food? Who wants to take that one?
I was going to let Melanie take that one. Partly because she has a child about the same age, whereas my children are a lot older. So I thought I'd let her take that one.
Sure. So we need food because it gives us energy. So kind of like how we have to put gas in a car to get the car to go, we have to put food in our bodies so we have energy so that we can talk on the internet or run outside and play or ride our bicycle. So we need to eat food so we have energy.
And I'm going to add that you also need to eat food so that you can grow. So that you can, because that energy also gets channeled into making more cells and in your body and making you get taller. So So I'll add that.
Yes, as I'm telling my son at dinner, he needs to eat his meat, his protein, so he can build strong muscles.
Well, I think that's a good lesson for all of us because, yeah, you want to eat the good stuff too, right? So you can get some good energy. And yes, I have a 6-year-old daughter, and that is these are the questions, and it's kind of it's like a tennis ball machine. It just keeps throwing. They keep throwing balls at you. You got to keep fielding these questions, but don't stop asking questions, Emily. That is awesome.
No, it's great to keep asking questions. We've also recently hit the why phase at home. So it's why this and why that. Well, why is it that way? And why does eating chicken give me muscle? Yes, but keep asking the questions.
Yeah, we love curiosity at Museum of Discovery. Discovery is in our name, and it's great. It's curiosity about science, curiosity about history, all that good stuff. So
can I just add on to that? Please don't stop asking the questions. I'm teaching older students, and they'll often say, "Oh, that's a silly question," or "I shouldn't ask that question." I'm like, no, please keep asking the questions. My favorite students as a teacher, both at the high school and college level, are the students who ask questions. It's so fun when they do. So please continue to ask questions, and we enjoy that. It's the curiosity that drives discovery.
that's right, because I swear, and I think my daughter thinks I do know it all, but I don't. So I need to keep asking questions too, as a parent. The biggest one is why, but maybe we'll answer that someday. So I do have some more questions about what you do, and I know that I'd ask you for some suggestions on maybe what you wanted to talk about. It does seem like making biology and concepts in biology accessible is something that you're probably passionate about, not just talking to fellow scientists, but just everybody, lay people who are new to the field or whatever. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, why do you think that's such an important thing to do to make biology accessible?
So if we look at the literature from educational psychology, when we see the personal relevance of scientific concepts, we're more motivated to learn them. When we see how it's relevant and related to our own lives and that it matters as part of our lives, then that's where the motivation comes to learn it. And if people feel like they can't do it, or that it doesn't matter, or that they're not smart enough to do it, then people shut down. And so I think it's really important to help make science accessible to people, and why I spend that is the central theme of everything that I do, from teaching to my research to my outreach and writing, is about this accessibility piece, because I think it is so important. And it comes up everywhere. It's easy to think, oh, I'll never need to know this again, and just leave thoughts of biology class in high school, or physics or chemistry, whatever science discipline you want. But then we go out in the world, and I mean, look at what happened with the COVID-19 pandemic. Everybody had to make biology decisions. We had to make decisions about masking and vaccines, and which vaccines you would get and when you would get it. And now people are talking about boosters and the Delta variant. Get questions about screen time in children. That comes up all the time. And there's these fancy apps, and should we buy these apps, or these STEAM toys or STEM toys, or do we do this? Do we do that? Is climate change real? Well, what the scientists say this, but my political party says this. And so it doesn't go away. And so that's why I think it's so important to figure out ways to present biology as being accessible.
And I actually take accessibility on a slightly different angle than Melanie's, but it's with the same idea that biology is for everyone. And my idea of accessibility is that everyone can do biology, and that it's finding the entry points that work for you. And so like I said, what I'm interested in as a researcher, but also as an instructor, is having biology not just be about memorizing terms and memorizing how things happen, but actually being able to figure out those ideas, because we can all do that, and making it so that everybody in my classrooms can figure things out, and also that they can describe those ideas in multiple different ways. So I like to give them lots of different tools. Like, it's okay to draw a picture. In fact, that's accepted. I want you to do that. That's one way of communicating your ideas, and scientists do it a lot, but we don't think they do. And, and in addition to graphs, can you describe this mathematically? Can you talk about that? And for some people, that's their entry point into biology. And I want to give people lots of different entry points and lots of different ways to explore biology. So that's partly where my research intersects this idea of accessibility.
I love that. I mean, I think that's what we try to do at the museum too. I'm just going to keep inserting ourselves in here because I'm a history person. I'm the curator of the archive. So, but I do feel like it's all about the accessibility and the relevancy. And I think gone are the days where you're like this expert who can't be questioned, can't be reached. I feel like you need to be open to people and stay relevant in their lives. And when you were saying, Melanie, about all the different things that made us all kind of like amateur, biologists, or with COVID and everything, I think that really brings it home that we really can benefit from an active, engaged population who cares about biology, who cares about science, and wants to learn more. So that's really great. So, and you already touched on this a bit, but can you give me some examples in your work about how you make biology accessible to people?
Okay, so I guess I'll kick it off. So one of the things I do is I pay a lot of attention to the questions my son asks me and the questions other people ask me. And so the children's book I'm working on, it's going to be tentatively called Felix Goes to the River. And so I'm actually going to, if you're interested in participating, we're going to do a crowdsource movement to actually name the character of my book. So if you're not already following me on social media, check it out for your chance to vote. But it's based on kids going to the Poudre River. So that's the main river that goes through Fort Collins, and what they see. And they're trying to earn their Eco Leader badge. And to get their Eco Leader badge, they have to figure out if the river's healthy or not. And so as we've gone to the river, because just living here in Colorado, that's just what we do. Last weekend, we were catching crawdads. And so all these questions about why are there lobsters in Colorado? So that's a question that came up, and watching a bunch of children who live right here all engaging with this crawdad and picking them up and showing them to each other. It's just like, okay, there's an opportunity there, because crawdads are an indicator species that tell us that the river's healthy. And so part of it's that, and just the random stuff I run into. One of my more popular social media posts is cooking bacon for breakfast. And I snapped a picture of it and said, why does bacon change color? And people got really into it. I did one a couple of weeks ago. We happened to see a mule deer hiding in the grass. This was again up by Horsetooth, Fort Collins. And I thought it was a stump or something sticking out, and it was the antlers sticking out. And so I took a picture of it and said, it's really easy to look at prairie grass and think there's nothing there. So I've done that. If you've done that as well, put it in the chat window. You looked at a big grassy field and go, there's nothing there. And so that was the lesson of, is there really nothing there, or is there something hiding in the grass? And people got really into it. So it's those little things that pop up, the questions that ask, the things that I see every day. It just really ignites people's curiosity and excitement. And then it becomes I've had that same thought. Or, my kid asked those questions too. And then it just opens the door to possibility. So I do a lot of listening to what people ask and say and do.
And I do a lot of listening, but in a slightly different way too. So just to build off of that. So I do a lot of surveying and asking questions of students and undergrads and high school students, depending on which stage of my career I've been at. And the idea for me is to find out where the stumbling blocks are, where are the difficulties, where are the points that people are struggling, and where are the parts where they're not struggling, because everybody brings resources and brings things that they have into the study of biology or any science. But everybody also encounters stumbling blocks. And if we can figure out a way to use the resources that you bring in to help you overcome the stumbling blocks, then you have a chance to be successful. And so that's one of the things that I really work on doing. And one of the stumbling blocks that for a lot of students is often mathematics. And so I work very hard to make mathematics accessible. And students in my classes, they work on being creative with mathematics, building their own equations to express their ideas about what's going on. And these are usually addition and subtraction or multiplication, nothing super complicated. And I often get comments back like, I didn't realize that math could be creative. I didn't realize I could have fun with math. I don't like math normally, but I like this kind because it's about expressing ideas. And that's one way to make it accessible because it makes it more comfortable. And when you are a biologist, whether you go to become a doctor or whether you go to become a research scientist, you are going to use mathematics. So if I can make it accessible in your very first exposure to biology, I've hopefully helped to remove one of the stumbling blocks that you are going to have. And I said, leveraging the resources, we use pictures and words alongside the mathematics so that people who are stronger in those areas can use them to help them with the mathematics. And we work in teams so that they can take advantage of each other's resources. And so I think all of that together helps then to make it more accessible.
So Anita, I really want to take one of your classes. So, can I audit one of those? We'll talk later about that. I think that's great. I had a few things to remark on. First, math, kids, just accept it. You got to do it, and it doesn't have to be painful. Just embrace it. I think, I always liked math. It's just not. It didn't end up being what I do, but I do use it on occasion, so that's good. And then I also had, for Melanie, a great name for your character might be Leslie. I don't know, just an idea. Throwing that one out there. And then also, what makes bacon change color? You tantalized us with that one, so yeah.
Yeah, so bacon is meat. It comes from pigs, right? And it's protein. And so proteins are workers in the cell, and to do work, they have to fold up. And so think of it like origami. So if you have a flat piece of paper, it's just a flat piece of paper. It doesn't do anything. But if you fold it into a boat, now you have a boat and it will float on the water. And so proteins are the same way. And when you unfold them, they change shape, they change color. And so the difference is a result of this proteins all unfolding. Of course, some of the fat cooks off of it too, especially if you're having American bacon. But when we see color changes in meat, eggs is another good example. That's because we've unfolded or denatured the proteins. So protein biochemistry right there over breakfast.
I love it. That's like delicious science. So, although I'm not a huge bacon fan, but I know a lot of people. I know that's an unpopular opinion. So, but now I know. Now I understand. So, so I guess I have more questions for you. I guess I'm just kind of wondering, like, how has your industry changed since you've started? Like, have you seen things change in your field since you first started your careers, or can you just talk about that a little bit? Or has it changed? I guess. So.
I guess as I feel like it, Anita, I welcome your thoughts on this too. I feel like it's rapidly changing. I think higher ed has been changing, and I think COVID is forcing change to happen even faster. And so that's kind of the industry in general. I mean, certainly while I was in graduate school, I mean, molecular biology as a field changes so fast that technologies become obsolete very quickly. And so it's much faster than doing psychology research, where I think the oldest paper I had cited was from 1913, maybe. You would never do that in biology, ever. And so it's, I don't know. Anita, what do you think?
I think that one of the ways that, so I exited the field of biology research per se, so I feel like I'm less qualified to talk about that, but I do work in a biology department. So I work in a biology department in the College of Biological Sciences. And my department is called Biology Teaching and Learning. And that is actually one of the ways the field has changed, because when I started, there was no such thing as departments that are focused on teaching and learning of biology. And what we've seen, this started with physics and then went to chemistry, and biology was a little late to adopt it. But what we've seen is that there's been an understanding that we need to actually do research on how people learn and how we can teach better, and to actually train people who are biologists to teach. That this is not something that everybody should just automatically know how to do or pick up, that there's not such a thing as a natural teacher, that people need training in this and then in this career. And I would say that's one of the biggest changes I've seen, and it's ongoing, like it's rapidly ongoing. We've got a biology education research conference coming up, and it's only been around, I think it's 10, 15 years, something like that. And it has been exponentially growing over the last few years. And I think that speaks to this idea of scientists recognizing that it's important to teach, that it's important for people to learn, that is, it gets back to this idea of accessibility, I guess, that this is something that everybody can do, and we need to figure out how to reach people. It's not their responsibility to pass through this tiny little hole. It's our responsibility to open that up so that everybody can enter the profession if they wish to do so. And there are many ways you can be a biologist, not just doing research or not just doing education research, which I had no idea existed. You can also be a writer, as Melanie is. You can be an illustrationist. That doesn't sound like the right word, but you can be a journalist. You can be a teacher. There are many, many things you can do with a biology degree besides being a doctor or a researcher, which are the two that we think. And Melanie, there's probably many more that I'm not even thinking of.
Yeah, for sure. And also kind of building on what Anita was saying and how biology education research has changed. The work that Anita and I are doing together is helping to bridge boundaries between the people who have traditionally studied human learning, so the psychologists and the learning scientists, and the people who are the discipline experts. And, there's been a lot written about soft sciences versus hard sciences, and that the arts aren't real sciences. And so something we're trying to do is help people understand what we have in common and how to work together, how to get around language barriers. If you say theory to a biologist, it means something completely different if you say theory to a psychologist. So little things like that are important, because we need the perspective of the people who really, really intimately understand how people learn, and also the people who really intimately understand what it means to be a biologist and how we teach biology, and that perspective of being somebody who's in the classroom teaching biology too.
Well, I think that does bring up this was a word that I think, Anita, you sent to me. It was, what is interdisciplinarity? First of all, you have to spell that. And then you have to answer this question. Interdisciplinarity, and what does that mean for making biology accessible? And I think that was kind of what you were talking about getting the other, but I'm going to let you answer it and spell it.
So I'm actually going to let Melanie answer what interdisciplinarity is, because she's written a paper on this. So I'm going to let her answer and give the textbook definition of it, so that, and then I'll add on a little bit with what I do, which is more multidisciplinary.
Okay, so I'm glad this question came up, both because it's why Anita and I are working together, and also kind of alluding back to the Museum of Discovery too. One of my favorite parts of coming to the Museum of Discovery is how they're able to synthesize very different disciplines together in a way that makes perfect sense. And so if you've been to the museum and walked through the music areas, they have all this stuff on the science of how musical instruments work, interspersed with history of music in Fort Collins. And so that relates to this idea of interdisciplinarity, is that it's when we take two different ideas that seem like they're different, they're from different fields. We have history here and we have science here. Well, those are different, right? But if we bring the two together, we get a new story. We get something that's different. And so an analogy I've used before is if you think of a prism and you shine light through a prism, what do? You get a rainbow. And so it's this idea that you have to bring all these pieces together and you get something new. And that's what makes interdisciplinary different from multidisciplinary, which Anita's going to talk about in a different, or transdisciplinary. So like cancer research is transdisciplinary. It's something that people who are interested in from a medical perspective, from cell biology, from bioinformatics, from chemistry and drug design and pharmacology. So it's not this idea of taking two things and pushing them together to make something new, but having different ways of getting there. And so I think the second part of the question had to do with accessibility. And so in my book, I do a lot of what the museum does as well. How do we build connections between biology and the arts? And so we find, if we look at the history of biology, that arts has been essential from the first day. The early biologists and naturalists, they had to draw pictures. And then also thinking about, and this again came from teaching non-STEM majors biology, why does a business major care about biology? And so getting into how funding decisions and money flows affects biological research and all research more than anything else. You do the research based on where the money is, not necessarily because you have a good idea. So I also have stuff on biology and psychology in there and biology and education, which maybe isn't surprising, but I think that can really open the door to accessibility when someone says, oh, I'm an arts person. Oh, there's this real need for biological illustrators. Okay, well, maybe this is the career for me. I think, Anita, that was the word you were looking for earlier, the biological illustrators, but I mean, that's a very viable and exciting career.
And I'm just going to add on to that often my students who are good at art are the best at looking down a microscope and drawing what they see. And then that allows for lots of interesting class discussions because they see things that other people aren't noticing. So I always enjoy having artists in my classroom for that reason. And I'm actually, one of the reasons that the work that Melanie and I do appeals to me is because I kind of mentioned that I switched what I was doing about partway through, and Melanie did too. And I did biology research for a number of years. I was a graduate student. I did a postdoc in biology research. And then I was teaching, and there was a bit of a transition to teaching, and especially in the high school space. And then when I went to get my doctorate in learning sciences, there was even more of a transition. And so, but having both the biology perspective and the education perspective allowed me to think about things in slightly different ways and to be able to put those ideas together. And I really love it when I get to work with people from both different spaces, because what happens, I talked about this idea of collaboration and why it's important. What happened to me in grad school is I would say something often biological, and I would assume that people knew what I meant. So, for example, one of the really big things in biology is mechanisms, which is basically describes how things work. Why do you start out with A and B and you end up with C and D? And that's just kind of, it's a word we use all the time. And someone of the learning scientists, they asked me in the very, learned professor said, what do you mean by mechanism? And I thought, oh, I have to define that. Turns out there's a whole lot of literature on what that means, but it really made me think, and it challenged my preconceptions. And that's why I love working across disciplines and working together. And that's, I think, why you get the creation of something new that Melanie was talking about, because it forces us to challenge our preconceived ideas of what we think is the way to describe things, the way to do things. And so I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And that is something we really strive to do at the Museum of Discovery, was try to bring together, our goal, I think, was to have the exhibits where you start doing musical stuff, and then you kind of work your way around the gallery and end up in our farming and ranching area and not really know how you got there. And it was just a natural progression of ideas and concepts. And I think that's really exciting, because I think it does stick we get a lot of kids at our museum. We love our kids. and I think if you catch them when they're young and you show them that this is something that is accessible, they can do, they can learn about, I hope that just sticks with them, especially when they go through those tough years. I mean, like middle school and like early high school, I think you can lose a lot of people, but hopefully it sticks with them a little bit longer and gives them that confidence to pursue whatever they want, which is great. So, let's see, I'm just trying to go through all my questions and make sure I touch on everything because we only have about 15 minutes left. So I want to make sure I get to some other things. So I did want to ask about what advice you might have for people who are looking into these kinds of careers that you're mentioning in biology, related to biology, kind of the things you do. What would you say to students or young people or anybody?
So I guess I'll start. I get this question a lot. I think almost every interview I do, I get this question. And it's kind of it's a two-part answer, and they're both related. And the first one is to just ask and to not hold yourself back. So I talk to a lot of people, especially since my book has come out, and someone says, well, I really want to write a book. And then they proceed to tell me why they can't. Or they say, I really want to do this career pathway, and then they tell me why they can't. And it's like, first of all, yes, you can. Don't come up with rules to hold yourself back. Don't come up with reasons why you can't do it. So don't ever hold yourself back and never be afraid to ask. I've ended up doing work that I didn't even know existed 5 years ago. And I think that's why I like being a scientist and doing the science communication stuff and writing, is that every day is an adventure and I love it. And I found out about this stuff because I went and talked to people. And I cannot emphasize enough doing networking and informational interviews, especially as a student. If you're thinking about trying on a hat, just email or pick up the phone and call someone and be like, hey, could you have 15 minutes? Can we go get coffee? Can you tell me about what you do? And then in 15 minutes, you might find, wow, that sounded really cool, but that is not interesting to me at all. Or it might be, wow, I didn't even know that career existed. Do you mind making an introduction to so-and-so? And then it kind of goes from there, because it's easier to flesh that out in 15 minutes rather than, I've unfortunately seen people, a lot of times medical students, they get into medical school that first semester, realize, oh, this isn't what I want to do. And by that time, you've been through a lot of schooling and you've taken the MCATs. You don't want to find out your first semester of medical school that you can't handle it, that it's not for you, and that you really don't like anatomy lab. And so I can't undervalue the networking, asking, exploring, and you'll find out the things that you never knew before. And to give yourself permission to go for it. Don't hold yourself back. If you want to try something out, do it. I just started taking tap dancing because I've wanted to do it my whole life, and stop making the excuses of, oh, I'm too old, I didn't do it as a kid, or I have grants to write. It's like, no, I'm doing it. And so I did it, and I love it. So don't hold yourself back. Ask for help. Ask people to chat with you and learn every day.
So I think my advice is very similar to Melanie's. And I share with my students when I start my class every year that I've had several careers, because I think many high school and college students, undergraduates, they think that they have to have it all figured out. You don't. And I loved being a geneticist, but life happens and things change. And I love what I do now just as much. And it's okay to change, and it's okay not to know what you want to do. And it's okay to discover and to try something out and then move and change and go with the flow. And I think going along with what Melanie's saying is, be open to opportunities, be open to meeting people, be open to hearing about something and go, wow, that sounds really interesting. I'm going to try that out. I'm going to do that. And just be open to the idea of change. And it's okay to change. And it's okay to decide, oh, you know what? That turned out not to be right for me, because all of that knowledge that you have, all of that stuff that you've done, all of that thing, that knowledge you've accumulated, it doesn't go away. And it actually, for me, has really helped inform what I've done next. And so don't be afraid to start down a path, and then don't be afraid to switch if it's not working, is how I would say that.
And I couldn't agree with Anita more. And I kind of want to add and emphasize one point that Anita said. It's really easy to sit in the audience and be like, oh man, Melanie and Anita, you've done so much cool stuff and you're at these big universities and blah, blah, blah. It's amazing. You must have never screwed up. I could write a long book on everywhere that I failed and everything that I've learned from it. So please don't get the impression that Anita and I are sitting here and have always had it all right. The grant that we're working on together that was funded, how many tries did that take, Anita? 4? We failed 4 times before we got it funded. So it looks pretty on the surface, but we failed a lot to get here. And that's helped us get here too.
And I'm just going to add to that when I was an undergraduate, that I failed a midterm in a biology class. And yeah, exactly. I failed a midterm. I went to see the professor and I said, okay, what am I doing? How is this? And I took his advice and I was able to improve my grade. But so just because you struggle with something, just because you find something hard, that doesn't mean that it's not right for you or you can't continue on that pathway. Just figure out how to improve and it'll happen for you. So we all fail at points in our lives, and it's whether or not you keep going that matters.
In which direction you keep going in. So
yes.
I actually failed my first biology class I took in college. I had to retake it. Yeah.
I love hearing stories of failure. And I'll tell you why. I think people do need to hear this, and especially young people who think they do need to have it all figured out. I think there's so much pressure to get scholarships and figure it out and have a clear career path. And I can't think of anybody I know who did that. It's just not a thing. And I used to think I could wallpaper my house with rejection letters, things that didn't work out. And when you're in the moment, it's terrible. It feels awful, but you do kind of, I guess I can look back and laugh a little. I don't know. It still hurts a little bit, but yeah, I think that's great advice for all of us. So, and I'm excited to hear about your tap dancing, Melanie. And I think if we have you on again, we're going to need a demonstration. So just be prepared.
Oh, for sure. So I'm actually trying to put together a biology and dance workshop for this fall. So we could chat more about that too.
That is amazing. I actually just recently started taking ice skating lessons. And I am not a spring chicken, but I did take it in college. I went to CSU. I went to Colorado State University, and I took it at EPIC, which is where I'm going again. And I love it. And I do think you could teach a physics class on what you do in ice skating, because it is all about, force and pressure and cutting the ice with those blades. So yeah, I'll keep you posted on how that's going. Hopefully I don't hurt myself, because then I'll probably be talking to biologists about healing my broken bones. So we'll see how that goes. So well, we only have a few minutes left, so I did want to just ask a question that the last time I did this, I really was inspired by the answers I heard, and I talked to some engineers the last time I did these interviews, and I just wanted to know if who was your inspiration? I think you've talked about this a little bit. Who are your heroes? Today, or in your childhood? Who really got you going, and that you just think about, and who should you be thanking for all of your successes and possibly failures? So.
Okay, I'll tackle this one first. So I am going to have to say my mom. She is the one who convinced me that, that I could do science, that it was worth pursuing, that even though I wanted to be a parent, because I knew that very young as well, that I could manage both. And just so you know, my mom never graduated from college, and she worked at home, and yet she is always up for learning. She's she's always she always wants to know more about the world around her, and that's very inspiring to me. So she's one of the people that I have to thank. I really think that I wouldn't have started out on my career path. And then the other person I have to thank is my department chair when I was a high school teacher, another very strong, admirable woman who she took a chance on me. I'd never taught at the high school level before, and she was getting her doctorate in educational research, and she exposed me to this whole new way of teaching, and also to the area and field of educational research, and encouraged me and mentored me. And she's still one of my good friends and mentors. And so, yes, I would have to say both of those people.
Okay, so thank you, Anita, for going first, because I needed another minute to think about this one. So I had mentioned that I had some wonderful biology teachers when I was in school, and that they were hugely instrumental in me getting into biology. And also my dad taking me to the lab when I was little and letting me watch things like the Discovery Channel and Learning Channel. But I have to say, I'm inspired by scientists who've gone before me. So I think about Rosalind Franklin's story, and I think about the struggles that I've had as a woman in science, and being like, you know what, I got to keep pushing against the glass ceiling for all the women behind me. So, and then also my students. My students are a big inspiration for me, both past and present. On the last day of classes this year, a student gave me a card, and I had her for both semesters. And so we went from fall semester, failing biology exams, questioning her life choices, don't want to do this anymore, to getting an A the second semester. And she had this amazing growth, and just wrote in this card about, that was because I was there cheering her on the whole time and helping her figure it out. And that's not the only one of those cards that I've received. And so that's what inspires me to keep going with what I'm doing and keep talking to people about science and seeing people's eyes light up when they hear about bacon. Again, people just got really excited about that. But that's why I do what I do. That inspires me every day to keep going, even when I'm writing grants and trying to figure out citations. It's like, no, there's a reason I'm doing this. I'm doing it for the kids, doing it for my students. And of course, my son too. He's a big inspiration as well.
Oh, I love that. Well, thanks for sharing that. I know we did kind of talk about that in the beginning too, and I think it is just so important to touch on that again, that, our actions with our kids and young people and really anybody stick and make a difference. And so I think that's amazing. I did want to point out, let's see. Oh, yes. My background is actually all of my daughter's art during lockdown. It's our pandemic gallery. And it just does show that this has had a lasting impression, and that kids, they're amazing and resilient, and we're teaching them all the time, and we love them at the Museum of Discovery. And actually, Anita, have you been to our museum before? Or, yeah, you.
No, and I'm really sorry that I haven't, because that was one of my sons. We used to go to science museums wherever we were at. So I love going to the science museums or museums of discovery or anything like that. And so I'll just have to keep it on my list for when I visit the area. So Melanie, when our next grant gets funded.
Our next grant gets funded. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, I hope you can make it out. And Melanie, next time you're here, just stop by the archive and say hi, because I would love to meet you both in person. And this has been so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. We're out on a regular basis. It's usually me chasing my kid throughout the museum. He loves to go to the Museum of Discovery so much. So I can't say enough good things about the Museum of Discovery. If you're listening and you haven't been before, definitely go. We've been members for the last 3 years. And again, you can pick up biology everywhere in the museum store, as well as lots of other interesting things, like my little dopamine pal came from the Museum of Discovery.
Yeah, our store is amazing too. So we can find lots of goodies in there, and your book. So yeah. So I guess that's all we had time for. This hour always just goes like that, which is just so fun. So thank you both for being here and just telling some inspirational stories. I feel like it's about biology, but it's just like, I guess that's life. I mean, it's just about stuff that kind of touches on all aspects of life. So thank you. And I did want to thank all of you at home for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And we are here for a reason. We're here for you to enliven your evenings and just talk about all these cool topics we have here at the museum. And if you enjoyed this program, you can donate to the museum. This is where I start asking for money, but we do appreciate all of your support. It really does. It's gotten us to where we are. There's a little thing down there, so you can support us by going to fcmod.org/donate, and you can donate to the museum. You can get tickets to the museum. We have lots of great content on there too, things to do at home and fun things to do with your family. And it's great. And also, if you want to find out more about more programs, just go to our website at fcmod.org/events. So just go check it out. Oh, I think that one doesn't have the website. So yeah, go check it out there. and yeah, I think that's it for tonight. So thank you again, Melanie and Anita, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.